Welcome back, and let's take a look at another NEBOSH exam question with a completely fake scenario, might I add. So, competitors out there watching this to try and get me into trouble with NEBOSH, calm down, it's a fake scenario. I'm not sharing anything confidential. Now, despite it being a fake scenario, it's good enough. It's certainly NEBOSH standard or close enough, and it's perfect for the purposes of this. Let's take a look at this question. How effectively did members of the workforce immediately manage the accident? 8 marks. Your answer must be based on the scenario only. Nice, easy question this, because effectively all we're going to do is just look through the scenario and we're going to look for what the workforce did immediately following the accident. The things that they did immediately to manage the accident. So first thing we do with all NEBOSH questions is that we read the question very, very carefully to understand what it's asking for. Most importantly, to understand what it's not asking for, because you don't want to go off into the wilderness answering something completely off topic. So read the question. How effectively, so how well, you could replace that with how, let me just type a Yorkshire question underneath. How well. In what way did they, it could be something like that, did they do this? Now when I say how well, it's not asking for positives. That's a common mistake with this. It's just asking how effective was it? And that could be, well, very effective, or it could be not very effective, or it could be so-so. So positives and negatives are valid answers in this question. How effectively did members of the workforce so members of the workforce, so that's telling you who. It could just say, how did the supervisor immediately manage it? And if it's asking about the supervisor, then that means that the other people are excluded from the answer. But it's not asking for the supervisor, it's asking how did the members of the workforce, and that means everybody who works there. Workers, supervisors, managers probably as well. That means everybody. How effectively did they immediately, and notice immediately is italicized. Immediately, it means like it's the stuff immediately after. It's not later, it's not the investigation later, it's not handling the HSC or making improvements a week or 2 weeks later. It's like it's at the scene. How did they immediately manage the accident? So immediately manage what? Not health and safety in general, not managing the factory or the office, not managing housekeeping. No, it's managing the accident. Which accident? Well, the one here, that one there, that accident. And then there's a load of stuff after this here. That's what they did immediately after. Notice we've got the following morning. Right, the following morning is not immediately after. That's the next day. So we're really interested in this bit here, which is immediately after the accident. Hey, sorry to interrupt the video. I hope you're finding this useful. If you want more information, we've got loads of free information on our YouTube channel. If you go into our channel playlists, you'll find a whole playlist called the 12 Steps to Smashing Your NG1, IG1 NEBOSH Exam. And it'll go through the 12-step process that our students follow to get some of the highest pass rates in the NEBOSH e-learning industry. If you would like even more help, then you can head over to our website, compassa.co.uk, click on NEBOSH Exam Help, and you'll also find study books that you can download for both the national and international general certificates. And without further ado, let's get back into it. So now that I've read the question very, very carefully, what I'm going to do, I'm going to read the scenario and I'm going to highlight things in my scenario which I think are relevant to this question. Once I've highlighted things, I can then pull together a list of things I want to say and turn that into a full answer, hopefully. So let's start up here. It says, one evening, a forklift was being used to move a pallet of shrink-wrapped boxes containing bottled drinks. The pallet had been stacked unevenly. Now you'd be tempted to say, oh, that's bad management. Yeah, but it's not bad management of the accident, is it? So that's irrelevant, really. It's irrelevant to this particular question. And as the forklift reversed, the load slipped and several heavy boxes fell to the ground. A warehouse operative walking behind the forklift was struck on the shoulder and knocked to the floor. The sound of bottles smashing caused panic and nearby workers rushed over. So straight away I'm going to say panic. That's not a good thing. Nearby workers rushed over. That is a good thing. As in they responded quickly. That's a good thing. Now, just to be clear on these NEBOSH questions, when it's asking you how effectively did they do something, the question's asking for more than you just repeating what happened. Like, the question is not asking what happened immediately after the accident. It's asking for how effective was it. It's asking for your opinion in whether what they did was effective or not very effective, or was it a mixture of the two? So as you're answering the question, you are expected to say what was good and what was bad. So here we could say, well, the initial panic is not very effective because people don't always do what they're supposed to do in a panicked situation. But in this case, workers did respond quickly and they rushed over to assist. And so that immediate reaction is good. Worker A immediately shouted for the forklift driver to stop and secure the vehicle. Brilliant. That's great. So we've got one worker who's saying stop, right? Stop, park it, keys out kind of thing. But you could question whether the forklift driver did take the right action there. So we've got a forklift driver here. I'm not entirely convinced the forklift driver responded effectively, because as soon as things drop, the forklift driver, they should have just stopped and secured the vehicle. They shouldn't have needed worker A to tell them this. Let's carry on. Worker B crouched next to the injured operative who was groaning and clutching their arm. Okay, so worker B is being attentive to the injured operative. That's good. Worker B tried to reassure them. That's good. We should always try to reassure the casualty. And asked another colleague to fetch the first aid kit. The first aid kit. Okay, so there's no first aider. Is there a first aider? I don't know. Surely you'd want a first aider, not just a first aid kit. So maybe that's not good. Or maybe worker B is a first aider. Okay. But it doesn't say it they're a first aider. So is worker B going to do first aid without being trained? There are some issues here, aren't there? There are some issues which we can refer to in our answer. Worker C, yet another worker. How many workers are there? A, B, C. And C is a 1, 2, 3. Wrong movie. Worker C, seeing the broken glass and liquid spreading across the floor, quickly grabbed some spill absorbent material and attempted to deal with the spilt liquid and clean up the glass. Right, so that's good, as in there's a worker C trying to clean up the spillage and make the area safe. So I would say to some intents and purposes that's good, but I've got some concerns here, and I'm just going to make a little note in my scenario. I'm going to ask, did they put on any PPE? Because when you clean up liquids and when you clean up glass, you should be looking after your own safety and wearing the PPE. And I'm also wondering about the safety of A and B, and is it safe to attend to the casualty? It's important that when we intervene and start to do first aid that we don't put ourselves at risk as well. And if there's broken glass everywhere and liquid, then we do have to make sure the first aiders are safe too. Meanwhile, the shift supervisor was called from the office. Well, very good. So I just called someone from the office. That's a good thing. They're not a first aider, but we've got someone, and the supervisor's carrying the first aid kit. Okay, so that's good. We have a first aid kit, but no first aider by the sounds of it, because the supervisor looks uncertain. They looked uncertain about what to do. After a short discussion, they used their phone to call for an ambulance. And so again, all of this is a little bit of good, there's a little bit of bad in here. The lack of certainty is not good at all. We should have summoned someone trained to deal with this situation if we have a first aider. There's a short discussion, but there is, it should have been pretty obvious right from the outset that we need to call an ambulance at this point. While waiting, the supervisor told the gathered workers to move back. Right, so there's a positive here. The supervisor's trying to manage the crowd.
Please disperse. Nothing to see here.
But some workers stayed close. Right, so they've tried to manage the crowd but failed. What they really should have done, they really should have cordoned off the area. At this point, they didn't, by the sounds of it. And we've now got workers taking photos on their phones. Oh my goodness. What are you going to do? Put it on Facebook? Put it on YouTube or something? Warehouse worker destroyed by bottled drinks. Clickbait. When the ambulance crew arrived, the injured worker was still sitting on the floor holding their arm. The crew had to ask bystanders to move out of the way. So again, we haven't managed the crowd effectively at all. They've had to ask them to move out of the way so they could reach the casualty. Wow. Okay, so they're actually blocking access to the crew here. After an assessment, the injured worker was taken to hospital, where it was later confirmed they had sustained a fractured collarbone, but were expected to recover. Right, so that's everything that's relevant. I now need to take that and turn it into an answer that's going to get me some marks. So what I'll start to do, I'll start to maybe pull together some kind of list, and I'm going to use numbered bullet points so I can easily count the things that I've said, and I want to get at least 8 comments here, 8 answers, hopefully more. So first thing is I'm going to mention the panic. And I'm always going to express an opinion as to what's good or bad. So I'm going to write down panic, not good. Now that's not going to get me a mark. That's not going to get me a mark, to be clear. I'm just going to make a quick list. So panic, not good. Nearby workers rushed over, fantastic. So I got the workers responded quickly. And that's good, by the way. Yeah, quickly, good. Now notice that I'm kind of just going through things in order. And that's fine. Like I say, this is not good, that's good, that's good, that's not good, 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 not good, and so on. But if you wanted to, you could structure it and say something like, the workforce responded very effectively in some ways. Well, not very effectively. They responded effectively, or at least tried to. Tried to, in some ways, such as, and then maybe you could say, well, they did this well, they did that well, they tried to do that, they recognized they had to do that. You could give all the positives. And then if you wanted to, you could say, but there were some other things which they didn't do, they failed to do, or they didn't do very well at all. And then you could talk about, say, the crowd control and so on, and you give the negatives. Now, if you want to structure it as in, here are the positives, here are the negatives, that's absolutely fine. The NEBOSH examiner is not going to care how you structure it. Me personally, just to make sure I don't miss anything, I like to just go through the scenario in order from top to bottom, making sure I get each and everything. So I've got the rushed over. Worker A shouted for the forklift driver to stop. Worker A recognized the FLT needed to stop and told driver. The FLT driver may not have immediately stopped. Again, I'm going to make comments as to what's good and what's bad here when I write my answer. The vehicle was secured. Okay, told driver, may not have been unsecured vehicle. Told driver to secure vehicle. Right, what's next? So we've got worker B is being attentive, crouching down, reassuring, tells someone to get the first aid kit. So worker B attends to injured person and reassures them. That's good. Worker B, who did they ask? Worker B asked another colleague. So that's, who's that? That's worker D? I don't know. Worker D. Worker B asks another colleague to get a first aid kit. Worker B, possibly not first aid trained. That's not good. As in that they may be tempted to do first aid without actually being trained. So they're gonna get a first aid kit. Worker C makes themselves useful. So worker C tries to clean up and make area safe. Worker C, PPE. And also, did all 3 workers enter into an unsafe area? They should have perhaps waited and cleaned things up first before attending to the casualty. Maybe, it depends on the scene, of course. You have to be there to make that decision. Shift supervisor called from the office, got a first aid kit, doesn't really know what to do. So workers summoned a supervisor, that's good. Supervisor brought a first aid kit. Supervisor uncertain, some hesitation to call an ambulance. Now notice it's an 8-mark question, but so far I've kind of made 13 different comments here, so I'm well on my way. And I would just write down all the comments I can on this. You know, there's probably going to be 15 or 16 quite easily. And even if some are very closely related, because the examiner might read these and might say, well, actually, answer 6 and answer 7 are kind of very similar on my marking scheme, and so they're only worth 1 mark. And maybe number 8 and number 10, maybe they are the same mark as well. Maybe 1 and 2 are the same mark as well. You know, it's like all of a sudden I haven't got 13 correct answers. Maybe I've only got, say, 8 or 9 at this point. So just give as many as you can. That way, if there are some answers that are very similar, you should pick up the marks anyway. Let's carry on. So we've got the supervisor. They called an ambulance. Good. Supervisor tried to do, let's talk about the crowd control. Supervisor attempted to move workers back. Supervisor did not cordon off area, allowed workers to stay to take photos on phones. That's not good. Workers blocked the path of the ambulance crew. Okay, I've got 16 points. Let's start to write those as a full answer. And I'm not going to write out the full answer here. I'm just going to do a few of them just to show you what it should look like. Otherwise, it's going to be an hour-long video as I write my full answer. But let's just start with this one. What should a good answer for this look like? Well, I will say there was an initial panic when the accident occurred, and this is not good because panic makes people less effective and they may not take the right action. Just 2 lines, that's all you need to do. You write an answer, 2 lines. there's the point, the panic's not good, that's my point. I've explained like why that's not good, and I'm linking that to the scenario. How am I linking it to the scenario? Because I'm saying there's panic when the accident occurred. That is a link to the scenario, because it says in the scenario there's a panic. So for those of you who love the P principle, PEE, point evidence explanation, that's a point evidence explanation answer there. Workers responded quickly, and that's good. Despite the panic, workers did respond quickly and rushed over. This is good because effective emergency response requires an urgent action. Urgent and fast action. Something like that. That's not very eloquent. Doesn't matter. It's not an eloquence test. I've simply just made my point that they reacted quickly, and that's good. And I have linked that to the scenario. They've rushed over. Let me do one last one. I will say this, I've already almost written it here, to be honest. Worker A recognized the FLT needed to stop and told the driver to secure the vehicle. This was effective action. Remember, look, notice that I'm always linking it back to the question, because the question was asking how effectively. So each of my answer is saying this was effective, that's effective, that was not effective, this was so effective. So I keep answering that question. Was it good? Was it bad? Was it effective? Recognizing it told the driver to secure the vehicle. This was effective, as it's important to do what? To stop the use of vehicles and equipment near an injured person. And we'll finish this off with just this similar point here about the forklift driver. The forklift driver did not respond effectively, as they should not have needed to be told by a colleague to stop the FLT and secure it. There we are. So there are 4 answers. They are 2 to 3 lines each. Each one is clearly answering that question of how effective did they immediately manage the accident. Each one is expressing an opinion as to what it was that they did, and was it good, was it bad, and so on. I will just repeat that process for every single one of those 16 points, and I think I will have well and truly smashed the answer to that question. Hope you found that helpful, and if you have any questions on how that works, just drop me a comment down below.